So, hello everyone. I think we are now live. So, thank you very much for joining us today with this webinar. Really excited to be joined here by Alexej, who's the CEO at Alphawell Brands. So, hi, Alexej.
Hi, everyone.
Hello. So, just give it a couple more seconds to see if any more join. So today our webinar is to talk about peak season preparation for Amazon and D2C brands. But more specifically, we're going to be Alexej's going to be talking about how to maximize your marketing strategy during peak. And then the last half of the presentation, we're going to be talking about how to get ready operationally for the peak season. So just a bit of housekeeping rules. We would like to have questions and we're going to be doing some polls through this webinar. If you do have any questions, please ask them in the questions tab and I will shout out when we're ready to do some polls. So let's do some introductions. So Alexej, would you like to go first?
Yeah, hi everyone. So I'm the CEO and founder of Alphawell Brands and Neoptima. My background originally from Russia and grew up in Germany. I know a lot of Germans here on the webinar, and then studied in the UK and did basically finance 10 years. And then 3 years ago launched initially Alphagreen Group, which then rebranded into Alphawell Brands. In short, we are a house of wellness brands. We have one D2C brand called Alphagreen.io. We also own an Amazon brand called 96 North, a scented candles brand basically. And then we also have a growth marketing agency called Neoptima.
Fantastic. I'm Kat. I'm a senior partnership manager here at Byrd, and I've worked now for coming up to 10 years in the logistics industry. So really a lot of my background is supporting brands to successfully navigate the challenges in e-commerce. So we've lost Alexej again. We seem to be having technical glitches. What we'll do is I'll just give you a little bit of an overview about Byrd while we're waiting for Alexej to come back in. So Byrd are a tech-driven third-party logistics company. And what we're really here to do is to help you outsource your fulfillment in an easy, effective, efficient way. Now we have a pan-European fulfillment network and we cover 7 territories with 24 different warehouses. So our territories are in Germany, France, Italy, Spain, Austria, France and the Netherlands. I seem to have forgotten all the territories we cover. Alexej, you're back. We're really struggling with the technical aspects today. I've introduced myself and I've introduced Byrd, but you want to just give a few words about Alphawell Brands?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm thinking like I have some like link which is available to everybody else, I think. So I don't know, David, can you just share a link specifically for me? Okay, let me just check again. Sorry, guys. Okay. You've just shared it? Okay, let's try this one. I think everybody joined by now. So yeah, as I was saying, we initially grew more than 20 brands with New Optima, which is our agency, and then realized we might as well start acquiring and scaling other brands. And so what happened is we acquired 96 North January 2022 and scaled it 3 times in terms of revenue. And then prior to that, we launched Alphagreen.io, which was a CBD marketplace, which is now a CBD/cannabis accessories lifestyle brand. Yeah, so excited to be here and share our insights.
Fantastic. And I think it is really exciting for you to be here, Alexej, because you've got some great insight and understanding about the challenges and the opportunities that brands have, just because of the nature of your experience and what you've launched into the marketplace. So really excited that you're here today. I think what we should do now is we should get some polls running before we jump into the webinar, just to get a bit of insight from everyone. So we've got a few questions. On average, how many months in advance do you place your order to prepare for your peak season? How happy are you with your current inventory management? And do you use in-house or outsourced fulfillment? So while everyone's doing their polls, and Alexej has just jumped out again.
No, I'm back now. This is the link Augustine just sent me, so it should be fine now. Yeah.
Amazing. So while everyone's filling in their polls, I was just thinking, how well do you rate your current inventory management, Alexej? And is there anything that you think you could do better, I suppose?
Yeah, absolutely. I would rate it, let's say on a scale of 1 to 10, I would probably rate it at 6.5, 7. It's related to the difficulties we're actually seeing also with some of the supply chain issues, and in particular also that we order stock from China. And because the way I kind of judge that, 1 to 10 is also like, how good is your cash conversion cycle? And our cash conversion cycle is literally very long, which is around 250 days, which is why it's so difficult to plan properly. And it can definitely be better. And we are taking a lot of steps to improve it. But yes, in the current times, inventory planning is just so crucial. And even though you might have had, 10 out of 10 in the last 2 years, you probably, dropped in terms of your satisfaction.
I think as well, just based on the experience that we've had over the last 3 years, we've had coronavirus, we've had quite a lot of things. It's definitely put a lot of, you need to maintain a lot of focus on actually what is happening with the stock coming in and out. So yeah, thank you for your insights on that, Alexej. I think everyone's had enough time now to answer the polls. What we'll do is we'll jump straight into the presentation. So over to you, Alexej.
Awesome. Well, okay, cool. So from what I'm seeing is we have kind of a mix here between Amazon and D2C brands. So given that we also own a D2C brand and an Amazon brand, I will try to balance some of the insights, how to prepare ahead of the peak season, which is obviously this Q4. So maybe to start with, what do we do around PPC and how we kind of look at it. Perfect. So the way we look at PPC is really, it's an investment for us. It's not a source of income. And the reason we are looking at it as an investment is because, especially on Amazon, the more good traffic you get through PPC, the more reviews you get. And in turn, the more reviews you have, the more organic traffic you have. Obviously, with D2C, it's slightly different. There, you really need to invest in your SEO to get organic ranking on Google. And the PPC on Google doesn't really help you as much with your SEO on Google. But looking at this slide and kind of more related to Amazon, PPC is really all about making sure to invest into the future, build up the reviews so you get a lot more organic traffic on Amazon. If you then go to the next slide, which is kind of like showing that with PPC you can increase velocity of reviews. So this is again, you sell more, you get a higher number of reviews in a much shorter time frame, and that will then allow you to rank up get the BSR rating improved, which is basically the rating which says how well and how high do you rank in your own category. And then if you kind of look at the next slide, everyone always talks about ROAS or ACCES. ROAS more in the D2C world, so this is return on ad spend, and ACCES in the Amazon world, which is the ad spend divided by the ad revenue. And what we are saying is actually, instead of looking at ACCES or ROAS, you really want to look at TACOS, which is basically PPC spend divided by your total revenue. And the reason, again, is going back to what I mentioned about treating PPC as an income, as an investment. It's if you do well and if your CVR, which is your conversion rate, is high and your reviews are high, then ultimately the organic portion of your sales is going to be high. And even though you're now spending a lot of money on revenue, on new revenue and ad revenue, the fact is that your organic revenue is increasing much faster, and therefore you should be looking at TACOS, because TACOS will then be actually very, very low, despite you potentially having a high ACCES. And the next slide is just showing kind of an example from a supplements category where it's a gummies brand, and they have a very high ACCES, 83%, which is ridiculous. I think our one is like 30%, but their TACOS is just 1.87%, and they're doing a net profit margin of 20%. So it's a very, very successful brand, but you couldn't actually tell from just looking at ACCES. So to summarize, you should know your niche and your competitors. You need to know, this is kind of the next slide, you need to know when to stop advertising, on which keywords and which keywords to add and boost your advertising. And then you want to really focus on the right metrics. I guess, yeah, just maybe also like from a D2C perspective, as I mentioned, there are not that many synergies really between SEO and PPC on Google. Neither there are any between Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, etc. and Google. So it's slightly different. So if you have more questions around that, please type them in, and we cover that in our Q&A section towards the end of the webinar. And then obviously, if you have more questions, again, we will put it into the webinar towards the end. We are running an accelerator last 2 weeks in October free, where we're also going to cover external traffic sources on Amazon. So many chats, and also like how to get traffic from Pinterest, etc. And obviously, we don't have time to cover all of that here, but this is basically all driving your reviews ultimately also in Amazon, which then in turn will help you also with your organic traffic. So next topic, it's about inventory and inventory management around, peak season. And if you're only D2C, you probably don't feel the pain as some of the Amazon brands feel it. So the worst case which can happen, which is obviously a bad case, but still it's your customer can't order anything on your website. Versus if you run out of stock on Amazon, what will happen is Amazon's algorithm will know forever pretty much that you've run out of inventory, which means that the moment you have inventory, it will actually take you much, much longer to regain the organic ranking you had, and it will take you more ad spend to get the same pretty much CAC, so customer acquisition costs, will go up for you because Amazon doesn't treat you as well, basically, if they know that you ran out of inventory. So a lot of the time, obviously, some people argue, no, like you should continue spending as you spend and kind of like crash into the wall. But we've seen from many brands we've worked with that it's much better to start tapering down PPC if you know that you're about to run out of inventory, rather than kind of crash full speed into wall and then have basically that event in Amazon's memory. So how do you not run out of inventory, especially in peak season? Well, first of all, and Catherine will cover that more, it's about proper inventory planning, management, having the right 3PL who doesn't do a lot of mistakes, which again, we've heard a lot is happening out there, especially peak season, where either inventory gets lost or like parcel doesn't get sent to the right place, etc., etc. So that's kind of like covered soon. But from our end, it's also about making sure you're doing email marketing correctly. An example can be winter is coming, get your present already, right? 20% off, right? And that way you don't cannibalize or discount your brand by constantly doing discounts, but you're actually still doing it in a thematic way, ahead of Christmas, but you're obviously doing it already in, let's say, November or something like that. Or you basically talk about Black Friday, again, not that week, but 2-3 weeks before. And that way you really can start getting some of the customers who are waiting for Black Friday or Christmas discounts, but you can get them much earlier because they really see that you're already giving them a discount. The second point, get back up inventory. So again, very related to the Amazon brand. So you usually get your supply from China into kind of, let's say, a pre-feeder of your Amazon warehouses. And much, depending on your shelf life, it's much better to just get way more inventory than too little and try to kind of play a plan for complete perfection. Because ultimately, if your product is great, if your reviews are great, then you can triple or quadruple your sales, and you can't really model it out. And this is kind of what we saw, where we had a very detailed model, and then ultimately we still had to order much more specific variations of a certain flavor, which just sold out much faster than we thought, for example. And then finally, with more sales, you will see potentially more returns, but much more questions from customers. So in order to have a great customer support level, you want to really also add more customer support people to your team ahead of the peak season, in order to just avoid angry customers for some reason. I guess the next slide, it's all about planning PPC spend, but also planning how slow you get that money back. As I mentioned, in our case, we still have 250 days as a cash conversion cycle, and that's because it takes us from the order, and let's say with China, to get the product to land in the Californian port 6 to 8 weeks because of supply chain issues, traffic, etc. Usually rests in the port 2 to 4 weeks, depending on how much other inventory there is from other brands who've been waiting for their inventory to be unloaded. Then it goes to the 3PL. Then from the 3PL, it gets picked up into Amazon, takes another 2 to 4 weeks. And then obviously it's first in, first out principle. So you're still selling a lot of the inventory you have, which is being sold first because it was there first. And then it's the inventory which just arrived from the Californian port, which then takes some time to sell. And then on top of that, obviously, Amazon holds on for 2 weeks to your money. So you basically ramp up in terms of the days without seeing your cash. And therefore, it's really, really important to plan everything ahead and really kind of being aware that maybe a black swan event can also happen in the meantime. And so that's how you really minimize the risk of running out of inventory. And then to summarize here, obviously try to have unlimited stock. So this is next slide. Of course, there is no such thing as unlimited stock, but have a lot more stock than you even think your best case scenario can be. Track it properly, so know where the stock is, and when you arrive at, how long it will take until you get the money. And then basically, plan everything else accordingly, emails, PPC, etc. So passing on to Catherine now.
Thank you, Alexej. That was really insightful, and it gives quite a lot of understanding and opportunities how to maximize your sales during that peak season. So my part of the webinar is going to talk a little bit more about operational planning in terms of peak. So as you know, the countdown has now begun. It's quite scary. It feels like it's quite a long time away, but it's not. There is only 35 days now until Halloween. We've only got 60 days until Black Friday, and we only have 90 days until Christmas. So what we've done is we've put together our top tips for ensuring that you have a operationally successful peak. A lot of these are quite obvious, but nonetheless really important and often get missed out when everything gets really busy. So the first most important tip is to use data to inform your decision making. So what does that mean? It means creating a forecast. Now, again, it's really obvious to create a forecast, but year on year, I have dealt with brands and businesses that don't have a decent enough understanding of their forecasts. So they may be able to say on average, we monthly sell X, but really what we need to do is everyone needs to have an understanding of the peaks down to daily levels. So how do you create a forecast and what data points do you need to consider? So as Alexej mentioned, selling on Amazon, but a lot of brands sell on Amazon, sell on other marketplaces, use FBA, use their own website. So and each marketplace has slightly different variances in how well SKUs perform and when the specific peaks and troughs are. So firstly, you need to compare your metrics across every single one of those channels to understand the fluctuations. Next, Alexej's mentioned a lot about managing your stock and making sure you have enough inventory so you don't get penalized on your marketplaces. So again, have a look at what is fast selling SKUs, what are your slow selling SKUs, and try to come up with creative solutions to perhaps get rid of some of that slow selling SKUs out of your warehouse to free up capacity for those faster selling stuff. So for instance, you can do various things like create bundles. So you can bundle specific fast moving SKUs with some slow moving SKUs at a special offer to get it out the warehouse. Your next area you need to look at is your previous problem areas. You know, what went wrong, what went right, where were your peak uplifts? And if you did any marketing campaigns last year, how successful were they? What are you going to do this year? And what sort of what metrics are you expecting to come back from that? Now, some very simple questions to ask yourself while you're creating your forecast. So when did your peak start? When did it end? What was the highest volume of orders? When did your highest volume of orders come in? When did you expect them to? Did you get your stock into the warehouse on time? Were there any bottlenecks with the warehousing process? Were there any suppliers that performed better than others? Were there any products that proved popular? There's a lot of questions that you need to consider when creating your forecast to ensure, that you've got a plan to enable, operational excellence during this busy season. So as I mentioned, we've not got a lot of time left. So what I've done is these are essentially our top tips you do not forget over peak. So maybe you've forgotten some of these. We haven't got a lot of time left, but there's enough time left to ensure that these processes are in place. So again, number one is to communicate your forecasts and your plans with everyone. So whether you use in-house fulfillment, whether you use a 3PL, whether you do FBA, everyone needs to know when the stock is going to arrive. And that means booking ASNs, advanced shipping notifications, early as possible, making sure the tracking information is there so the 3PL and FBA knows when that stock's going to arrive. Last year, according to Supply Chain Weekly, 66% of employers didn't have enough staff during the busy seasons. So providing a forecast is a sure way to ensure that there's enough capacity in the network to manage that extra traffic. My next tip is to plan for the unexpected. Alexej's mentioned this before earlier on, saying about SKUs that he thought was going to do well, and then in reality they've done a lot better than what you were expecting. So again, what do we do in those situations? It could be dial down your marketing, it could be increase your customer service, it could be letting the operations manager know. So how you plan, essentially, you need to plan for the unexpected. And the easiest way to do this is to create a cross-functional working group. These are the stakeholders, the heads of all your various departments that can come together in a quick, effective way to act with agility when any situations arise. Again, much like Alexej mentioned about creating early peaks, and specifically that's to increase your reviews, to start getting cash in early. The other side of it is to help reduce the pressure on logistics. Amazon do it. Amazon create Prime days before Black Friday, so they can create capacity in the network to ensure that they can get that next day, those 2 to 3 day delivery speeds. Try come up with creative solutions to help your network have a steady stream of traffic and to start getting that cash in early rather than all concentrated towards the end of that buying season. My next tips are, again, very, very obvious, but nonetheless extremely important, surrounding data. Firstly, to ensure your website is up to date. Again, I can't stress how important this is. It's all about managing your customers' expectations, ensuring you get those marketplace metrics that you're wanting to achieve, whether you're selling on Amazon, on eBay. You want to make sure your customers is aware of everything that's happening. So get your Christmas posting dates up and running. Make sure your shipping rates are the right prices. Make sure you've got all your service level agreements available to hand. So again, can you feasibly offer next day in the last week of Christmas, last week before Christmas? Try and come up with solutions and try and have the information there to help you manage your customers' expectations. Another housekeeping tip is to ensure your data is accurate. So one of the number one reasons why a parcel will be delayed or will not delayed, i.e. arriving to the home or delayed leaving the warehouse, is to do with inaccurate data. So if you're selling internationally, It's about getting your customs data ready. Make sure you've got HS codes. Make sure your descriptions are up to date. Make sure everything is there. So when that parcel is ordered, it can go fly out that door straight away without having been delayed waiting for additional information. Again, it's the same about managing your inventory volumes. Do a stock check. If you use a 3PL, they will have updated volumes in terms of your inventory. If not, make sure you monitor your inventory and make sure that all your volumes are correct. And again, address capture as well. If your address is not right, the parcel is not going to arrive where it needs to go. So look at ways to ensure that you have accurate address capture in place. Say with Byrd, we can validate your addresses before it goes out. And there's also other companies that you can do where you can plug it into your website and make sure that those addresses are accurate. And last but not least, it's have a returns process in place. Again, it's very obvious, but 84% of consumers will not buy from a brand again if they had a rubbish returns process, which is quite a high figure. And considering that last year during peak returns doubled, you know, that's a lot of returns and potentially a lot of unhappy customers. So make sure you've got that returns process, a robust returns process in place, and expect your returns to peak probably around the first week in January. Right, okay, so we're nearing off now to the end of this webinar. I just wanted to end with a few final points. So as much as Christmas is about ensuring you get your parcels out the door straight away and ensuring that there's capacity in the network to handle the increased parcels, it's very easy to actually forget about your customer. So you need to ensure that you keep your customer at the forefront of everything that you do. And you can do this by managing their expectations, but also don't forget to delight them. So for instance, automate your communication. Alexej mentioned about having increased customer services, available during peak. What we want to do is if you automate your communication, you can reduce the pressure on your customer services and you can reduce WSMO calls. So this is sending out tracking information, sending out updates of when their parcels are coming out. But also don't forget to be proactive with the communication. If a parcel is delayed, if there is some issue in the network, something's happened, be proactive and tell your customer, because what that does is it creates peace of mind and improves your brand reputation. And you can also, you know, further delight them by saying, I'm sorry, you know, there's been a delay in the network, but to say sorry, here's 20% off your next purchase. And that's a really good way of being able to manage their expectations, but delighting your customer at the same time. Again, keep an eye on your stock. Super, super important. As Alexej's mentioned, I've mentioned, it's a surefire way of damaging your metrics on the marketplace. But if you're a D2C brand, just think about your customer who has spent ages trying to find something to order. They've gone and ordered it, and then all of a sudden they get an email later on and saying, I'm really sorry, it's not in stock. It's just not what you want to experience during Christmas. So if you're not selling on a marketplace and ultimately you have run out of your stock, turn the listing off to make sure you manage your customers' expectations. And lastly, ensure you've got the best unboxing experience. So there's some really interesting, exciting, innovative ways that you can do this. So think about your packaging. Maybe have some Christmas boxes, maybe focus on sustainability, maybe have brand your boxes. There's different ways that you can delight your customers. You want your parcel to stand out when it arrives on the door. Also, like Alexej mentioned about, have special offers, have leaflets inside your box to ensure that you get your customer coming back. And really, again, it's about incentivizing and saying thank you. What you want is you want your customer for life and not just for Christmas. So that brings us to the end of the presentation. We've put together a couple of slides now just to talk about the Alexej's Accelerator program. If you want to just explain a little bit more, Alexej.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Catherine. Yeah, perfect. Guys, if you want to learn more, last 2 weeks of October, we're doing a free accelerator, which is 2 webinars where we go really deep into the first session on PPC and inventory planning. So much more examples and more details basically than just now. And then the second session will be all about external traffic and also funding. So a lot of the right inventory management, of course, depends on you having the right funding in place. There are revenue-based financing providers such as Uncap, Judy, Wayflyer, etc. So working with these guys to allow you to buy more inventory ahead of the peak season is crucial. And so we will be discussing how to kind of optimize these areas during the webinar. So David, kindly shared that a link. So please sign up. And should be very, very interesting. Cool. So I guess we have time for some Q&As.
So if anyone's got any questions, please post them in the questions tab. I have prepped a couple of questions ahead. I'm just trying to I'm having technical difficulties now because I want to find the results of the poll and I can't seem to find them. So
actually, I can see them. So there was first question was, on average, how many months in advance to place your order and prepare for peak season? And we have 33% said 2 months in advance, 33% 3 months in advance, 33% 4 months in advance. And I would actually say we're also more in the later stage, so like almost like 4 months, which again is not very efficient if you try to handle your cash properly. But it all depends, I guess, where your suppliers are based and how risk averse you are. The second question, how happy are you with your current inventory management? 40% are happy, 40% saying can be improved, and 20% are unhappy. So I guess if you are the 40% and the 20% can be improved and unhappy, but that is your solution. But also obviously try to implement a lot of the things Catherine talked about as well. And then what's interesting, 83% have outsourced fulfillment versus 70% have in-house fulfillment. And that was a question, do you have in-house or outsourced fulfillment? So the trend obviously is all about outsourced fulfillment. I think, personally, again, it is much more cost effective than having in-house fulfillment. And I think also around like you guys at byrd, you do these like certain boxes or certain inserts, right? If somebody wants to do something very special, you can basically do it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Because one of the disadvantages of using FBA is losing your brand, isn't it? But whereas the advantage of using a 3PL like byrd is we have standard fulfillment options. So if you just want us to put it in a box and send it out, then we're your people. But then equally, brand identity is super important. So what we do is we give customers the ability to kind of bespoke their boxes, so they can have their own boxes, own style. We can have inserts in it. We can use specific void packing, specific tape. It's all about giving you the flexibility of being able to maximize on your brand awareness and creating that unboxing experience. Right, so I've got a couple of questions for you, Alexej. So first one, we've talked about unboxing experience quite a bit. For your brands, how do you ensure that you have the best unboxing experience?
Yeah. Great question. Yeah. So I guess, as you mentioned, the downside when you do Amazon and FBA stuff, there is a very kind of big limit on how much you can do. What we are looking to start doing is implementing a QR code on our box as well, and allowing us to build a relationship with the customer, so the customer finds out more about the brand on the website after reading the QR code or scanning the QR code. When it comes to the Alphagreen D2C experience, so we had actually around Christmas last year, we had like a thematic box actually for Christmas, and we had a sample inside the box as well. So people who wanted to try a new flavor, there was like a small bottle with a new flavor. And yeah, you can basically do that to obviously enhance the whole experience for the customer, and then allowing him or her to then reorder or order the new scent if they like it.
I'm interested to hear, how successful was that campaign when you added the samples in? Because obviously the samples cost, but it's providing your customer with the opportunity to try something new, isn't it? So how did you measure that? And
so in terms of how did we measure it, I guess like it always depends on the numbers. Like in our case, this was a CBD product. So in CBD products, a lot of the sales are organically driven through SEO. So we couldn't really test it with like crazy big numbers. So it wasn't, again, a perfect way to then see, okay, should we repeat it or should we not repeat it? Generally speaking, I would say it wasn't a big failure, but it wasn't a massive success in our case. But that's also related to the fact that, again, CBD, as we saw with the wider industry, lost a bit of traction. And that's, again, related to certain products which are legal, have a much worse retention than certain products which are not legal. So kind of, finishing maybe on this point.
Fantastic. Okay. And then another question. Tell me a little bit about the challenges that you've faced during peak.
So I would say on the Amazon front, the one challenge was, as I mentioned before, some of the scents sold out much faster than we thought, than we planned and thought. And that basically made us kind of rush to do additional few orders. And because you had this combination of geopolitical crisis, energy crisis, supply chain crisis, the logistics costs spiked. And so in hindsight, it would have been much better to just order one large order and not plan it basically for perfection, which then ended up not happening. Because it was almost like a much better case happened than we planned for, but that obviously ate into our margins because of the increased supply chain costs and logistics costs. Basically that was probably big lesson learned around inventory planning.
Okay, so this year you've purchased a lot more stock.
Absolutely, yeah.
Fantastic. And have you got your forecast ready, Alexej?
We have our forecast, but we are actually also thinking it won't be 100% correct. So, but yeah, at least we have more inventory this time than what the forecast says.
Well, this is the thing. Like, a forecast is only it's your best guess, isn't it? Right? But it's better to have a best guess than to have nothing at all and just to go in completely blind, because that's just not the way to have a successful peak. And then I think I've got one more question for you. You have touched on this before, I suppose. Just say, what practices have you put in place this year to try and flatten out your peak?
Yeah, so we have basically a few email marketing campaigns lined up. I mean, just to read out some of the taglines, or let's say subject lines. Don't stress about holiday gifts this year. So again, instead of sending out this email, 1 week before Christmas, we're sending it out early December. Want it in time for Christmas. Again, similar story. Also, kind of beginning of the second week. And then in November, we're actually saying ready for 2023, right? So again, it's like taking, the Christmas kind of purchase season all the way into November to flatten out the peak. Yeah. And then again, like, you obviously don't need to use these ones. You can be very creative depending what kind of brand, what kind of product you have. But yeah, it's all about selling more to some of the customers who are waiting for discounts to happen during Black Friday or Christmas. And by giving them that discount before, you're allowing them to just purchase before.
Yeah, I think it's all about trying to change buyers' perception right now. Black Friday just created such a massive capacity issue in the network, and it puts a lot of strain on all departments. But if you can think of creative ways to capitalize on that and bring the traffic in earlier and or later as well, because like you say, start thinking about 2023, because you want your customer forever, don't you? Not just during Christmas. Right, well, that was very, very insightful. We are now running over. We've got 46 minutes into this webinar. So I just want to say thank you so much, Alexej, for joining us today. What you said has been really, really insightful. And I'm really looking forward to your accelerator program on the 20th and the 27th of October. And if anyone has got any questions for me or Alexej, or anything to do with SEO, PPC, promotions, anything to do with outsourcing your logistics, please feel free to contact us. We will also be sending out a newsletter with a link of the recording, as well as a special offer from Alexej as well. So thank you so much for joining us today. And
awesome, guys. Thanks so much.
Have a great day. Thank you.